covering Flint, Saginaw, Bay City, and Midland. This is ABC12 News at 6, starting with breaking news.
There are no velvet ropes in our criminal justice system. Nobody, no matter how powerful or well-connected, is above accountability when they commit a crime.
Developing tonight, a second round of criminal charges tied to Flint's lead-tainted water and a deadly Legionnaire's disease outbreak. 9 people charged in all. The 3 biggest names: former Governor Rick Snyder, former Michigan Medical Director Nick Lyon, and former Chief Medical Executive Dr. Eden Wells. Investigators today calling it one of the largest criminal investigations in the world. Tonight, we have a team of reporters covering all angles for you, from who's charged with what, why these specific charges were picked, and what people who lived through this crisis have to say about today's announcement. To lead us off is ABC12's Ann Perrette. She is diving into the charges former Governor Snyder is facing. And Ann, for years, our community has demanded that he be held accountable, and that happened in a sense today.
Angie, Rick Snyder is charged with 2 counts of willful neglect of duty. Now, these are misdemeanors. They carry a sentence of up to 1 year in jail or up to a $2,000 fine if Snyder is convicted. Now, today we did ask if harsher charges were considered, like involuntary manslaughter. The team said that they could not comment, citing the grand jury process.
This is an ongoing investigation. And if there is evidence that would prove that a crime was committed, we will surely go where the evidence will lead.
We also didn't get a direct answer on if the statute of limitations could prevent new charges. For now, Michigan Solicitor General Fadwa Hammoud says her team is confident in the charges they've brought, pointing out they went through millions of documents, several hundred electronic devices, and utilized world-renowned infectious disease experts to analyze the many Legionnaire's disease cases and deaths.
We used every investigative tool at our disposal to investigate this case because the people of Flint deserved that we treat this investigation as the most important investigation in the world, and that's how we proceeded.
While she can't share the evidence that led to charging former Governor Rick Snyder, Hammoud did say he's facing the 2 counts of willful neglect of duty for failing to protect the health and safety of the Flint community. Since a conviction of these 2 misdemeanors only brings up to a year in jail or a $1,000 fine, I had to ask, is it worth spending taxpayers' money?
As to damaging effects on children that will follow them for generations to come, we didn't put a price tag or come in with a certain list of charges.
And the team made it clear that Flint's water crisis was a failure at all levels of government. So it was also asked why no members of the Genesee County Health Department or the EPA were charged. Hammoud said that she also could not comment on that, instead repeating that the team, quote, pursued a full and thorough investigation. Live in Flint, I'm Ann Perrette, ABC12 News.
As Ann said, former Governor Snyder is charged with 2 misdemeanors. Many Flint residents now worried about the possibility of a plea deal, meaning Snyder could get off with an even lesser charge and eventually have it wiped from his record. Prosecutors addressed that concern today.
These cases are charged just like any others that are charged out of my office, are charged whether we can prove the cases beyond a reasonable doubt. That's it. And again, it's way too early to talk about any other strategies or procedures or anything that's going to happen.
While Snyder is the most well-known official facing charges, 4 others are charged with much more serious offenses. ABC12's Michael Nafso joining us live with what roles these people played in Flint's water emergency and the potential punishments if convicted. Michael?
Yeah, Angie, those charges range in severity, with the most serious ones including involuntary manslaughter and extortion. And if convicted, they carry penalties of up to 15 and up to 20 years. Nick Lyon, the MDHHS director at the time, is facing some of the most serious charges: 9 counts of involuntary manslaughter and 1 misdemeanor charge of willful neglect of duty, punishable by up to 15 years in prison. There's also Jared Agin, the governor's former communications director and chief of staff, charged with 1 count of perjury, punishable by up to 15 years in prison. Another big name on the list, Snyder's top aide while he was governor, Rich Baird, being charged with perjury during an investigation, accused of improperly using state resources, lying under oath, trying to interfere with investigators, and threatening a state-appointed research team during the investigation. He could face 20 years in prison if convicted. Now, here are the members of former Governor Snyder's inner circle. You can see there, lastly, we have Eden Wells, is the state's former chief medical executive, and she's facing the most charges with 9 felony counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 felony counts of misconduct in office, and a misdemeanor charge of willful neglect of duty. The possible penalty for each charge is up to 15 years in prison on the involuntary manslaughter charges, up to 5 years in prison on the misconduct in office charges, and up to 1 year in prison on the misdemeanor. And prosecutor Kim Worthy says this case is about justice, truth, accountability, poisoned children, and loss of lives.
This case has nothing whatsoever to do with partisanship. It has to do with human decency, resurrecting the complete abandonment of the people of Flint, and finally holding people accountable for their alleged unspeakable atrocities that occurred in Flint all these years ago.
Now, that was just four arraigned, some of the big names there, but we do have all 9 listed up on our website, including the charges and the punishments. You can find that up on our website, ABC12.com. Reporting live in Flint, Michael Nafso, ABC12 News.
Michael, thanks so much. Rich Baird's attorney took a moment to speak with the media shortly after court this morning. When asked for his thoughts on the charges, here's what he had to say.
They're ridiculous. They're without merit. This is a political prosecution by a Democratic administration that's looking to make gain. It's not going to happen. We're not going to stand for it.
Rounding out today's charges, former emergency managers Darnell Early and Gerald Ambrose both charged with misconduct in office. State Health Department employee Nancy Peeler charged with misconduct in office and willful neglect of duty. And finally, former director of Flint Public Works Howard Croft charged with willful neglect of duty. Misconduct in office carries up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. And as we mentioned earlier, willful neglect of duty carries up to 1 year in jail and a $1,000 fine. Continuing our coverage now with reaction to these charges, Karen Weaver was Flint's mayor during the height of the water crisis, and she has mixed feelings about today's announcement. She's concerned that these charges don't mean convictions.
While those are appropriate charges for others and inappropriate for Snyder, it's hard to get too excited still because we have been down this road. We've seen manslaughter charges before, and nothing has happened yet. So you almost just sit back and say, well, you know, let's see how this turns out, because you're scared to put your faith and your trust in that. You really are.
Current Mayor Sheldon Neely also weighing in, saying in part today's press conference with details of the state's criminal investigation confirms there were multiple levels of wrongdoing to our community. We now have to work towards striking a balance of dispensing justice and restoring confidence. Now that we have heard from lawmakers, what do Flint residents have to say about today's news? Our Sherry Hardman has reaction from one of the first voices to speak out over the lead-tainted water and the impact on residents. Sherry?
Well, Angie, as you know, Melissa Mays has never been one to hide her feelings when it comes to what happened to the city of Flint. Today was no different when she learned the charges former Governor Rick Snyder is now facing.
He used to say, the buck stops with me. Well, that's true. So why isn't the responsibility landing on you? And I mean, he was taking, you know, lots of accolades for what seemed to be good things with the emergency manager law, but absolutely running away from all the things that went terribly wrong.
At the top of that list for Melissa Mays, the switch from the Detroit River to the Flint River as the city's water source, leading to the poisoning of Flint's water and its residents 6 years ago.
Once Schuette was no longer blocking or interfering charges against Snyder, so we had great hopes when we had a new attorney general. But then, you know, about a year and a half ago, when everything got thrown in the trash, and it's been radio silence since, we just all kind of came to the conclusion, I guess there's going to be nothing done to this man.
But today, former Governor Rick Snyder was charged for his role in something that has forever changed the vehicle city. Charges Mays says is an insult to residents.
He's getting hit with a misdemeanor and a $1,000 fine. I was like, that's like 1 cent, 1 single penny per person he poisoned. That's pretty amazing. And the fact is that if it was you or I, that poisoned one person, I'm fairly certain we would be in jail and not having to pay $1,000. So it's a travesty of justice, as it is.
Mays hopes when all of this is said and done, all of those responsible will truly be held accountable.
We need to see people sitting in jail. We need it to be known that it is a crime to poison Flint residents, that you can, no matter how, rich, white, politician, whatever your job title is, it does not allow you to poison poor Black and brown bodies and just walk away.
Again, Snyder is facing 2 counts of willful neglect of duty, each a 1-year misdemeanor and or $1,000 fine. Live in Flint, Sherry Hardman, ABC 12 News.
Sherry, thank you. Now, nearly 7 years into this crisis, we are taking a look back at some of the key moments that got us to where we are today. In November 2011, then Governor Snyder declared a local government financial emergency in Flint, placing an appointed city manager in control. On April 25th, 2014, as a cost-saving measure, Flint switched its water source to the Flint River. We know now that the water was not being properly treated. Corroding water through the pipes caused them to leach lead. After repeated boil water advisories and water quality warnings, more than a year later, on December 14th, 2015, Flint officials finally declared a local state of emergency. The state followed suit less than a month later. Between April 2016 and July 2017, 15 people were charged in connection with Flint's lead-tainted water. And finally, on June 13th, 2019, all pending criminal cases tied to the water emergency were dropped, with plans to start from scratch. That brings us up to tonight with new charges now on the books. But no, the story is far from over. In the coming days, weeks, and months, we will continue to bring you all the latest developments in this criminal investigation. Stay with ABC 12, both on air and online, for updates that matter most.